All right. Good afternoon, financial professionals. I'm Phil Haug, Senior Vice President of Sales with E4 Insurance Services, and I'm welcoming you to today's Brew, Building Relationships Every Week. Thanks for tuning in today. For those of you joining Brew for the first time, I'd like to extend a warm welcome. And we'd also like to start off today's Brew telecast today by or celebrating today's national days. We have National Cheeseburger Day, which I already know what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. We have National Respect Day, which I think can go. I think we should kind of have that every day. National Rice Krispie Treat Day and U.S. Air Force Day. So if you know somebody who's in the Air Force, make sure you say thank you and recognize that for the national day today. And go buy them a cheeseburger. They'd probably really like that. So on today's brew, we're going to continue to celebrate Life Insurance Awareness Month. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about stories that sell. We're going to spend some time discussing some different things that as an agent and as a producer and as an advisor, I've had the opportunity to sit down and help and visit with individuals at their time of need, but also setting up, making sure that things are taken care of when that time comes. And a lot of times when we're visiting with our customers, with our clients, the stories that we can tell them will often help them buy the solutions that we're presenting. So today we're going to discuss the stories that sell. We encourage you to use the chat box or raise your hand if you ask any questions. All attendees will be entered in to win a CE voucher or a Starbucks gift card, and we will announce the winner at the end. And again, I want to thank you guys for all tuning in today. So all of us have been around the business for a long enough time to understand the importance that life insurance has when it comes to a family. And I like to share the story of three different examples. Being in leadership, bringing individuals into the business, there's always three examples that I like to share with them on the importance that life insurance does play. One of them is it's a good story, but it doesn't have the ending that you'd maybe think. So about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to go down to take over an agency in Southeast Georgia. And shortly after me taking over the agency, I was received notification that one of our clients had passed away and that they had a total death benefit of about 2.1 million. The company that issued the case actually had a $999,000 limit on the check. So I received three checks, 999,000 on two of them, and then I think it was around 100,000 on the third. And I called the wife, called the widow, and I set up an appointment to meet with her. And she agreed to meet with me in Milledgeville, Georgia, at the Publix parking lot. And it was about 2 hours away, and got in my car the next day and went up and made that trip up to meet with her. And I remember driving up thinking, I've got $2.1 million in checks sitting on the front seat of my car. And I kept thinking, like, I'm going to be coming in and I'm going to be having this conversation with her. And I'm bringing an olive branch. I'm bringing an answer. I'm bringing, a resource. I'm bringing something to her that she can keep, the family going and keep the house and keep the business going or whatever she needed it for. But I had in the front seat of my car, I had $2.1 million. And for those of you on the call, I've never had $2.1 million sitting in my car. And I thought it was kind of cool. It brought it home. And as I'm driving up, I had all these things in my head on how I was going to discuss. And obviously, she just lost her husband, and it's tragedy. And I pull up, and it starts raining, and I immediately jump out of my car, and I jump into her car, and we sit down, and I started visiting. And the first thing out of her mouth, she said, "How much was the total?" And I said it was $2.1 million, and I've got three checks, and I've got them here for you. And I was expecting her to say something, but what she said was completely different than what I expected. And she looked at me square in the eyes and obviously was very emotional. And she looked at me and she said, 2.1 million? I said, yes, 2.1 million. And she said, I don't know if that's going to be enough. And I didn't know I had rehearsed this opportunity in my head 1,000 times, but I did not rehearse that scenario. And the only thing I could say was the old answer, the old rebuttal of why? And she went in and said, well, I'm 50 And my husband had a successful business, and that's paid for, but his business was himself. And we've got a mortgage, and we've got the lake home, and we've got 3 kids, and the oldest is not yet in college. So I've got these expenses. And she started going through it. And she's like, but the way I see it, she goes, we're going to have to sell the lake home. We're going to have to liquidate the business. We're going to have to make a lot of changes. And she started kind of doing the math and explaining it to me. And she wasn't wrong. And it blew me away because I thought, here's a woman, here's a husband that loved his family enough to make sure that they understood that whether he was there or not by buying life insurance. He put a large face amount into play. $2.1 million seems like a lot. Actually, it's actually 2 million, but there's some interest growth. But say $2 million policy was a large policy for the time that he took it out. However, when it came time to actually be supporting the family, the survivors were looking at me saying, this might not be enough. And it's important to remember that when we sit down a lot of times, when we're visiting with our customers, when we're visiting with our friends, and a lot of times our customers and clients become friends. And that's, I think, what we need to look at it when we're visiting with our friends about life insurance. It's the resources that we provide and understanding that that is a lot of times that's the last check, right? And I had an old mentor say, if I'll make his sales pitch was always, you need to have the client understand how much they're worth. When they understand how much they're worth, they then will buy the right amount. Now, take note, we're not talking about selling life insurance. We're talking about helping people buy. And there's a huge difference on those two things, right? We want to help people buy solutions. We don't want to sell them a policy. When we're talking life insurance and we're having those conversations with our friends, his pitch or his conversation is, I'll make you a deal. And he'd pull out his checkbook and he would say, I will write you a check for whatever amount you want, but the trade is, take all your life insurance that you have right now. I'll write you a check for that. So let's say it's $1 million. The trade-off is you have to give me every paycheck from now until the day you retire or the day you die. And it would get clients to step back, and when they looked at that math and they said, wait a minute, I'm making $100,000 a year. I'm making $250,000 a year. I'm making $300,000 a year. I'm making $30,000 a year. The check for a $50,000 policy, or the check for a $1 million policy, or the check for a $2 million policy suddenly gets put into perspective. And when you realize it is there to replace every single paycheck that individual is going to earn, suddenly it becomes not enough. And the client changes their opinion. The client changes their mind. The client sits back and says, well, wait a minute, that's not a good trade. I need more. And I got the opportunity to see that play out firsthand. And all of you have been in the business. All of you have had, everybody's delivered a death check, right? The other thing is, there's a story that I like to tell is sometimes what shapes our career is the death benefit check that we do deliver, but what alters our career is the death check that we didn't deliver. And that goes back to an early time in my career where I had an opportunity to have somebody's insurance. I had their home and auto, and he was a very successful, he was an F&I manager for a large dealership in the town that I was working at, did very, very well, made a ton of money, had everything kind of set up, had been through a divorce, had a serious girlfriend. It was very amicable with the ex-wife. There was a child involved, and had his insurance, had his home insurance, had his car insurance, and his name was Ray. And about, I don't know, a year or two after I wrote, but I never talked about life insurance. I always thought he had it set up, right? And I also had his Roth IRA set up. I never talked about life insurance. And about a year after writing his business, I get a phone call from his girlfriend, and she asked me a question about his insurance. And it was kind of an odd question. And I asked her, why are you asking? And she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Ray passed away over the weekend. And what had happened is it was North Dakota. It was the first warm weather. For those of you that have been in the north, they salt and sand the roads. And it was the first time that the roads were dry. And it was the first time that he had had warm enough weather to take the motorcycle out. And he was out and about and he went to a corner and he hit a patch of sand. And when he hit the patch of sand, he was going about 15 miles an hour. So by no means was he going fast. He hit a patch of sand and he dumped his bike. And his girlfriend is on the back, he's on the front, and he happened to do this at the exact wrong time, and he hit a sign. So if you've ever been at an intersection and you see the stop sign, there's the metal post. He dumps it right there, and he hits a sign, and it hits him on the side of the body. And obviously, the motorcycle's kind of messed up, and he's not feeling very well. The girlfriend walked off the accident. Everything's fine. Somebody sees it, calls an ambulance, and ambulance shows up, and he's fine. And he's walking around, he's conscious and coherent, and all of a sudden, like that, he collapses and he passes out. And thank God there was an ambulance there, so they're able to try to resuscitate him, try to get him back. Only to find out they put him in the ambulance, rushed him to the hospital, only to find out that the sign had hit him at the exact wrong spot, and it had caused extensive internal bleeding. And on the outside, he looked like he was completely fine, but on the inside, he was completely tore up and he passed away. Okay. And I went to that funeral a couple weeks, it was about a week and a half later. And it was the policy that I didn't deliver that kind of changed my career, because I sat in that funeral and I watched a grieving girlfriend and a grieving daughter who was 6 years old. I watched them sit in the front row of the funeral, and I realized that my decision not to bring up life insurance was changing the trajectory and altering the path of both of their lives, including that little girl. And I never wanted to feel that feeling again. And I had a mentor when I started said, you always want to feel bad, but you never want to feel guilty. You always want to feel bad that something happens, but you never want to feel guilty when it does. You never want to feel guilty that you didn't do your job. You never want to feel guilty that you didn't bring it up. And I sat there and I watched it, and I kind of played this thing out in my head where I was like, how is this girl going to, is she going to be able to stay in the same neighborhood? Is she going to be able to go to the same school? Is she still going to have the same opportunities, like going to the best colleges and getting the best medical care and education? And, all of that would have been fine if her dad was there, because her dad would have given her anything. Her dad did give her anything. I made a decision because I assumed that he had life insurance. I made the decision to not impact that. And that altered, it was 20 years ago, that altered my conversations that I've had with clients ever since then. So it became something I was interested in, and it became something that was a passion. And the point of it is, when it comes to Life Insurance Awareness Month, sometimes it's good for us to go back and remember why it is we do what we do. Yes, the commissions are nice. Yes, the rewards are plenty, but those pale in comparison to when a client elects to put coverage into place. It neglects to realize the impact that we have. Lastly, the story that I like to tell is there's very few things on earth, and this is a story for you as agents, and there's very few things on earth that have a generational impact. And when you have what I mean by that is you look at the most important individuals in a person's life. It's typically their physician, their lawyer, their accountant, their advisor, and their religious authority, right? Whether it's a priest, a rabbi, a pastor, those are the most important things in their life. All of them, when you're dead, technically serve no purpose. If you're passed away, your physician can't revive you, but your physician's probably going to have a bill for your family. Your attorney probably can't do much for you other than solidify and finalize your trust work. But again, you're passed away. But when when the estate's done and the probate's done, then they're going to have a bill for the family. The accountant, when you're passed, is going to do a final return. They're going to have a bill for the family. The religious authority, the pastor, the rabbi, the priest, they're going to console the family. They're going to help make sense of things. But again, you've passed away and you've passed on. There's going to be a funeral. They're probably going to have a bill for the family. The only person that can come to the family and have resources and answers is you as the advisor. And that has generational impacts. That has generational impacts of making sure that the kids can stay in the house, the business can stay open, the family can be taken care of. You can have when everything's falling apart, you're coming and you're buying them time to make sure that they can pull everything together. And there's very, very few careers that I'm aware of. There's very, very few professions that I know of that can have that generational impact. And if you think that I'm lying, or if you think I'm overemphasizing it, just look at the statistics of what happens when a child has to alter their life, whether it's moving neighborhoods or schools, or when you look at somebody that is financially behind the eight ball and they can't pay their bills, what ends up happening to their health and their longevity and relationships and all those things. That lasts for generations. And every single one of us has the ability and the opportunity to sit down and alter the path of not only our own families, but the families of so many others. And when you look at September as Life Insurance Awareness Month, I hope that as an advisor, every month you're aware of it. But I really hope that this month, we had a couple weeks left. I really hope that this month you make an extra added effort in making sure that you focus on making it a talking point with all of your clients, because it does make a difference. And it's far bigger than the contest. It's far bigger than the commissions. It is a much greater and noble profession than we ever give it credit for. So those are the stories that sell. Those are the stories that tell what we do. And it's my encouragement to you guys as advisors is to have a story of your own. If you don't have a story, borrow it. Take mine. Everybody's either known someone or know either experienced or known somebody that's had that experience. Leverage it, use it. Next time you've got a client and they think that $2 million is a lot, share my story. You might have one of your own, but stories sell. People love buying. It's our job to put them in a position to let them buy. And sometimes they'll tell us no, but that's okay because we'll always feel bad when something happens, but I don't ever want anybody to feel guilty. Does anybody have, while we wait for any final questions or hand raises, I would like to remind you that today's brew, including our entire library, will be recorded and shared on our brew website at e4.insurance. And if we don't have any other questions, we do have, I picked a number and our winner today of the CE and the Starbucks gift card is Shane Nowasaki. So Shane, be on the lookout for your CE voucher and your Starbucks gift card. Next week during the brew, we'll wrap up Life Insurance Awareness Month. Ignoring policy review can have major impacts on many families, not just one. Josh Meester, E4 Regional Vice President, will discuss a true life event that impacted one of our own. He'll discuss a person's story to remind us how simple tasks can avoid disaster for numerous people involved. I want to thank all of you for investing time in your career today by listening to The Brew. Come up with your own story or feel free to borrow mine, but make sure that you put the needs of others ahead of yours and good things will always happen. And thank you for your business with E4.